when they kill these guys, famously, Euryalus puts on a stolen helmet. And this is always a bad idea in the Aeneid. Anyone who puts on someone else's armour, for example, Turnus putting on the belt of Pallas later on in the poem, this turns out to be a bad idea. And that's because basically in Roman ideas, and indeed in Homeric Greek ideas too, what you should do with the spoils is not wear them, but dedicate them to the gods. And that's what Aeneas does, for example, at the beginning of Book 11, with the spoils of Presenters. He does the right thing, but Euryalus puts it on because he's a young guy who likes to look good. There's a bit of psychology going on here. He's kind of Flash Harry, if you like. So everything seems to be going all right. They've killed their enemy. They're going through. They've taken their spoils, but then they have bad luck. They meet a detachment of cavalry commanded by the tough Vulcans, and it's Euryalus' helmet, this flash helmet that he's taken, which betrays them. And this is kind of ironic, but perhaps suggests that he shouldn't have taken it. That was a bad move. And the commander of this detachment of cavalry is a guy called Vulcans, who also is a tough guy, and he speaks in tough guy words at 376. State viri, so he challenges them. Stand there, men. Quae causa viae? What's the cause of your journey? Who are you there armed? Where are you going? So he fires out 4 short questions. So you know this guy is tough. He's like Nisus. He's a tough soldier. He talks like a tough soldier. So there's going to be trouble, basically, and that's what happens. So they can't respond to these challenges, and basically a fight breaks out. So what happens here is that Nisus escapes, but he loses Euryalus, and then looks back and sees that Euryalus is surrounded by the enemy. So how can he do something here? So he prays to the moon goddess, and he successfully throws 2 spears and kills 2 of the enemy. But in fact, dramatic irony again, this is counterproductive, because Vulcans then says, well, okay, you've killed my men, I'm going to kill Euryalus. And at that point, Nisus just says, kill me instead. And that really does show the depth of the love that he has for Euryalus, which I suspect is not just that of male friendship. And in the death narrative at 431-2, the death of Euryalus, we have both brutal language of violence and very moving language of pathos. So, for example, when Euryalus dies, we have the sword driven home strongly, smashed through his ribs and broke his white chest. That's pretty concrete stuff. Tarantino would be proud of that. On the other hand, we then get the pace slows down, and we get the famous simile, which compares Euryalus to a crimson flower, a flower the colour of blood, in other words, a handsome, beautiful flower cut down by the plough, which is obviously the sword. And the poppies are weighed down, just as the head of the young man is weighed down in death. And here we get imagery which is almost female. Euryalus is young and vulnerable like a girl. In fact, Virgil is using a famous simile here, used by Catullus and by the female poet Sappho. So it has a female origin here. And perhaps suggesting that Nisus is female in other ways, that he's the kind of female end, feminine end of the partnership. And so then Euryalus dies, and Nisus kills Vulcans in revenge and dies himself. So he takes vengeance for his friend, but dies. And these 3 deaths bring the end of the episode. Death is always a good closure, as the poet Tennyson said. Death closes all. And in films, you often see how death is a really good ending, because it's the most ending thing there is. What is there after death?